Right, and so now we want to talk about Anthony Wallace and his focus on the supernatural aspect of religion as opposed to the complexity of religion or the social nature of religion, for example. And so about the 1950s, we kind of stopped viewing Native Americans as quite so primitive. We still were viewing Native Americans as inferior or as primitive societies. And so they would have been ranked with these primitive religions, if you want to use the language of the times. But we start to see Native Americans as not quite so primitive. And so we start to see academic study of Native societies, and we start to see arguments made for the complexity of their myths and legends and their religions as a whole. And so we're starting to see a lot more research focusing on Native religions, Native American religions, and religions outside of the U.S. start focusing on how they are actually very complex and complicated and intricate, just like Western religion. And so at this time, we're seeing a lot of research about Native American religions, and then also we start to notice that these religions are changing quite a bit. And so that's when Wallace comes in. And so he studies changing religious beliefs among the Seneca and contributes those changes to white expansion and interaction between Native Americans and people of European descent. Okay, and so he's focusing a lot on ceremonies and rituals. Remember, rituals are just those stylized performances that involve symbols. They're associated with political, social, and religious activity. Obviously, we're speaking religiously here. But they only make sense within their religious context. You can't remove a ritual from its religious context and have it still be as meaningful and make as much sense. Okay, and so Wallace coins this definition of religion, being beliefs and rituals concerned with supernatural beings, powers, and forces. Okay, and that's pretty similar to what you'll see a lot of places. It's pretty lasting. Yes, there might be some tweaks here and there, but that's a pretty strong definition of religion that has withstood a lot of changes. Okay, and so Wallace is focusing really on the religious aspect of the supernatural. And so he lumps everything together. So belief in magic or voodoo or a single god, multiple gods, animism would fall under here. And then also kind of amorphous powers and forces or religious beliefs that are less strict or less organized. And we call those mana, which would be the belief that sacred power exists in high-ranking people or spaces or objects. Okay, so this is kind of like animism, except that it's more of a sacred power and less of a spirit, and it can inhabit and take on people, not just objects or inanimate objects, but also humans. Okay. There are a few limitations and drawbacks with Wallace's definition of religion. It's very static, so he's focusing on how religion has changed, so describing those religious changes, but not understanding why they change or the effects on culture or the people in those societies. He's still also depicting very religious people or groups as intellectually limited, so he's still in this idea of some people and some religions being less than others. And he doesn't really focus on why people are holding on to beliefs so strongly.